Sundari Hari
So, congratulations to whoever dressed the deities today. They did a fabulous job. It must be years and years, lifetimes of experience. Oh no, really? Just the first time? Oh my goodness, it's amazing. It's beautiful, absolutely. And of course, Gorni Kai Valley is one of the usual beautiful decorating and dressing the deities. It's really nice. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
Jayam Mudiriye.
Mudiriye.
For reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam.
Before reciting
The Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest.
which is our very means of
We should
conquest,
first offer our respectful obeisances
which is first offer our respectful
to the
obeisances
Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Narayan.
to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Narayan,
To Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being.
to Narayan Rishi,
To Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning.
Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning,
To Srila Vyasadeva, the author.
to Srila Vyasadeva, the author,
And to Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual master.
and to Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual master.
Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Bhakti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nivasesha Sunnavad Paskyacha Desakarane.
Prabhu, can I just ask one quick question before you start?
Yeah.
Do you happen to know that second part of Prabhupada's Pranam mantra, how that manifests, who someone wrote, or because someone asked my Guru Maharaj the other day, and he didn't know. He thought it was before he came. So I was just thinking maybe you
Well, Srila Prabhupada wrote it.
Yeah.
he wrote.
He wrote, yeah, because the devotee,
Yeah,
that
they
was
know.
real early, and they
Right.
couldn't
Right.
compose Sanskrit.
So at what point do you know historically,
That's awesome.
like when?
I don't remember where it is written someplace, maybe in the Lilamrita,
Okay.
in those beginning chapters.
I know it's early on though. But as Prabhupada would often say that I did not write these books, Paramatma did, so he's, he took the dictates of Paramatma and he gave us a prayer to understand the role of his mission. And so, but it was, I remember reading it also somewhere like Lilamrita or something like that. So, is that any more? Anything else?
Thank you, Prabhu.
So Mataji will be leading us in the proper pronunciation and melody for Sanskrit.
Devadvisham Nigamavatmani Nishtitanam Devadvisham Nigamavatmani Nishtitanam
Devadvisham Nigamavatmani Nishtinam
Urbir Mayena Vihitabir Adrishyaturbi Urbir Mayena Vihitabir Adrishyaturbi Lokan Gnatam Mati Vimoham
Atipralobam
Lokan Gnatam Mati Vimoham Atipralobam
Lokanatam Bahidamo Atipralobam Vesham
Vidhaya Bahubhashyata Aupadanyam Vesham Vidhaya Bahubhashyata Aupadanyam Devadvisham Nigamavatmani Nishtitanam Urbir Mayena Vihitabir Adrishyaturbi Lokan Gnatam Mati Vimoham Atipralobam Vesham Vidhaya Bahubhashyata Aupadanyam
Chaturbi
लोकान्नतामतिविमोहमतिप्रलोभम्
Lokamratamatibhimohamativilobham
वेषं विदाय बहुभाष्यत औपधर्म्यम्
Vesham Vidaya Bahubhashyata Avadamyam
Deva Dvisham Nigamavatmani Nishtitanam
Deva Visham Nigamavatmani Nishtananam
Pumbir Mayena Vihitabhiradrishyaturbi
Purvirmayena Vihabhiradrishyaturbi
Lokam Gantam Atibhimoham Atipralobham
Lokamratamatibhimohamatipralobham
Vesham Vidaya Bahubhashyata Alpadomyam
Vesham Vidaya Bahubhashyata Avadamyam. Boy, I have to ruin it now. The Brot's done it so perfectly. Devam Tvisham Nigamavatmani Nishtitanam
Deva Visham Nigamavatmani Nishtitanam
Purbi Mayena Vihitabi Adrishyaturbi
Purvirmayena Vihitabhiradrishyaturbi
Lokan Natan Mati Vimoham Mati Pralobham
Lokam Vritam Atibhimohamatipralobham
Vesham Vidaya Bahubhashyata Avadamyam
Vesham Vidaya Bahubhashyata Avadamyam
Deva Trisham Nigamavatmani Nishtinanam
Deva Visham Nigamavatmani Nishtanam
Purvirmayena Vihitabhiradrishyaturbi
Purvirmayena Vihitabhiradrishyaturbi
Lokanatamatibhimohamatipralobham
Lokamratamatibhimohamatipralobham
Vesham Vidaya Bahubhasyati Apodamyam
Vesham Vidaya Bahubhashyata Avadamyam.
देवाद्विषां निगमवर्त्मनि निष्ठितानां
Deva Visham Nigamavatmani Nishtinanam
पूर्भिर्मयेन विहिताभिरदृश्यतुर्भि
Purvirmayena Vihitabhiradrishyaturbi
लोकान् ज्ञातं मतिविमोहमतिप्रलोभम्
Lokamratamatibhimohamatipralobham
तेषां विधाय बहुभाष्यत औपधर्म्यम्
Vesham Vidaya Bahubhashyata Avadamyam. Kivai.
देवाद्विषां निगमवर्त्मनि निष्ठितानां
Deva Visham Nigamavatmani Nishtinanam
पूर्भिर्मयेन विहिताभिरदृश्यतुर्भि
Purvirmayena Vihitabhiradrishyaturbi
लोकान् यथां मतिविमोहम् अतिप्रलोभाम्
Lokamratamatibhimohamatipralobham
देशं विधाय बहुभाष्यत औपधर्म्यम्
Vesham Vidaya Bahubhashyata Avadamyam Deva Visham Nigamavatmani Nishtitanam Purvirmayena Vihitabhiradrishyaturbi Lokamratamatibhimohamatipralobham
vidaya bahupashyata apadanyam.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll do the word for word then. Did you do that, Krishna Swami?
Yeah, well.
Oh, thank you. No, I think it's okay.
2:7:37.
Okay. Deva Drisham, of those who are envious of the devotees of the Lord.
Of those who are envious of the devotees of the Lord.
Nigama,
Nigama,
the Vedas.
the Vedas.
Vartmani,
Vartmani,
on the path of.
on the path of.
Nishtitanam,
Nishtitanam,
of the well-situated.
of the well-situated.
Purvi,
Puri,
by rockets.
by rockets.
Mayena,
Mayena,
made by the great scientist Maya.
made by the great scientist Maya.
Vihitavi,
Vitadi,
made by
made by
Drishyaturbi,
Drishyaturbi,
unseen in the sky.
unseen in the sky.
Lokan,
Lokan,
the different planets.
the different planets.
Natam,
Natam,
of the killers.
of the killers.
Mati Vimoham,
Mati Mohan,
bewilderment of the mind.
bewilderment of the mind.
Ati Pralobam,
Ati Mohan,
very attractive.
very attractive.
Vesham,
Vesham,
dress.
Dress,
Vihaya,
Vihaya,
having done so.
having done so.
Bahu Bashyate,
Bahuvashyate,
will talk very much.
will talk very much.
Aupadanyam,
Apadanyam,
sub-religious principles.
sub-religious principles.
So I'll read the translation, then we can repeat. When the atheist, after being well versed in the Vedic scientific knowledge, annihilate inhabitants of different planets, flying unseen in the sky on well-built rockets prepared by the great scientist Maya, the Lord will bewilder their minds by dressing himself attractively as Buddha and will preach on sub-religious principles. Please repeat. When the atheist, after being well versed in the Vedic scientific knowledge, annihilate inhabitants of different planets, flying unseen in the sky on well-built rockets, prepared by the great scientist Maya. The Lord will bewilder their minds by dressing himself attractively as Buddha and will preach on sub-religious principles. So this is obviously, a different Kali Yuga, and Prabhupada will explain in the purport. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
The incarnation of Lord Buddha is not the same Buddha incarnation we have in the present history of mankind. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, the Buddha incarnation mentioned in this verse appeared in a different Kali Yuga. In the duration of life of one Manu, there are more than 72 Kali Yugas, and in one of them, the particular type of Buddha mentioned here would appear. Lord Buddha incarnates at a time when the people are most materialistic and preaches common sense religious principles. Such ahimsa is not a religious principle itself, but it is an important quality for persons who are actually religious. It is a common sense religion because one is advised to do no harm to any other animal or living being, because such harmful action is equally harmful to he who does the harm. But before learning these principles of non-violence, one has to learn two other principles, namely to be humble and to be prideless. Unless one is humble and prideless, one cannot be harmless and non-violent. I'll read that again. Unless one is humble and prideless, one cannot be harmless and non-violent. After being non-violent, one has to learn tolerance and simplicity of living. One must offer respect to the great religious preachers and spiritual leaders, and also train the senses for controlled action, learning to be unattached to family and home, and enacting devotional service to the Lord, etc. At the ultimate stage, one has to accept the Lord and become his devotee. Otherwise, there is no religion. In religious principles, there must be God in the center. Otherwise, simple moral instructions are merely sub-religious principles, namely known as upadharma, or nearness to the religious principles. So the verse again is, when the atheists, after being well-versed in the Vedic scientific knowledge, annihilate inhabitants of different planets flying unseen in the sky as well-built rockets prepared by the great scientist Maya, the Lord will bewilder their minds by dressing himself attractively as Buddha and will preach on sub-religious principles. Om Gyan Tamaranda Shagirandana Salakaya Chakso Umalitandya Tazmasi Gurgan Maha. So, obviously, the scriptures are being presented. Those people that are presenting the scriptures have knowledge of past, present, and future. Trikalagya. We ourselves, we are all we are conditioned souls, and we are covered with 4 defects, which are imperfect senses. We have a tendency to make mistakes. We are illusions, and or can be illusions, and we can cheat or be cheated. So, in that state, in the conditioned state, because we are in this limited situation, we're not qualified to even do research on this cosmic creation. We don't even have the ability with the little toys we make or instruments for knowledge to increase our vision, like telescopes or microscopes. We can't understand this material creation by our own research. We need to take knowledge from the perfect source. So we are not perfect, but the persons presenting the knowledge, they are perfect. And when we listen to them and present it as it is perfect knowledge as it is, coming from perfect sources, those individuals who see past, present, and future, then if we repeat properly, without any adulteration, then we are perfect. And we can become even more perfect by engaging in this hearing and chanting in a regulated fashion. It was at Shinvata Swakata Krishna Punya Savana Kirtana. We have regular attendance in the Srimad Bhagavatam and hearing. Then gradually all that is dirty within the heart becomes cleansed. And by that process, then we know Tesham Satatam Yuktanam Brajatam Pritipurvakam. By steady, determined devotional service, Krishna reciprocates from within, and we have realized knowledge. It's not possible for us with our limited brains and limited senses to be able to, ascend to the truth. The truth descends to us. So, just like even right now, as I'm speaking, I don't know how it is that these words are coming out. I don't know how it is that my mind is working, how I can move this hand. I have no control over these things. When I drink the water, I don't know what happens, how it knows to go where and be distributed properly. There's so many factors in our existence that is like, when they say, like a child. When a child is just a few, maybe a year or so, when is it that the child begins to understand that this is a cup? That sound, cup, they can understand the sound and the form, or water. They can understand. This is a major event. It's almost miraculous how this happens. They still don't fully understand. So we are so limited and so dependent on everything. We are to learn how to speak, to learn how to walk. We're dependent on our parents, our teachers, our siblings, so on and so forth, and then the demigods, and ultimately the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, as very limited, conditioned souls, we are submissive to the truth. We listen in a submissive way. In the Bhagavad Gita it says, just try to learn the truth from a self-realized soul, renders humble service, and inquires submissively. Such a self-realized soul can impart knowledge because he has seen the truth. So the truth has been revealed to him. So it's not by a question of mental gymnastics or using, the scientists are using telescopes or using microscopes trying to understand, the quantum nature of energy. I heard something just briefly on NPR yesterday when I was driving, and it was talking about they know this dark matter, but they haven't found it yet, and they know it by the influence of it. And it's 85% of our universe, they say, and I don't even know what I'm talking about right now. I'm just repeating what I heard. And there's this thing called dark matter, and it's 85% of the universe, and yet they know it's there, but they haven't ever seen it. Okay? So therefore, we know there's a higher intelligence that beyond this universe, that's created this universe, but we may not ever, all of us have seen him. There are people who have seen God. And the Lord has come in various, many incarnations. Here's another Buddha. This story, this is like the stuff of a, Steven Spielberg movie or something, or what's the one who did the Star Wars? What was his name? George Lucas, something like that.
Yeah.
This is Buddha. I mean, can you imagine pitching that story in Hollywood? I got a great new thing for stuff at the next level of Buddha, and enters into this galactic war with the invisible spaceships. I mean, this is with a special scientist who knows this knowledge called the Vedas. Darth Vader, the Dark Vader. I mean,
they said that, man.
Yeah, they do. That absolutely. I mean, I've heard that in Star Wars there's a lot of parallels with Mahabharata, and there's so many things in that whole trilogy there. So, I mean, that's what I've been told. So this is the way, and so in the Buddha, and here it's described that this is sub-religious principles that Buddha is preaching. And in this age, he preached sub-religious principles in which he stopped them from misusing the Vedas for animal slaughter. Now there's animal sacrifice within the Vedic knowledge, but they were misusing it, just as Jesus Christ did. Many people think that pastime with Lord Jesus Christ in the temple, where he was angry with the money changers, had to do with profit, and there probably was some aspect of that, but it also had to do with that what were they doing? They were selling the paraphernalia for animal sacrifice, and the animal sacrifice was just becoming a kind of animal killing, animal slaughter, and profit to satisfy their tongue, to satisfy their greed. And Jesus Christ came along and smashed them, and in the same way Lord Buddha did, in a more the same principle, that you don't misuse the scripture, And because it's in the Old Testament of the Bible teaches that you can sacrifice certain animals. If you build an altar, so many cubits by so many cubits by a certain type of priest, a certain type of animal, at a certain time of the year, chanting certain prayers. Just like it's in the Vedas. So Jesus Christ came along and he came with a New Testament, a new knowledge. No, this isn't what you do. Thou shalt not kill. Prabhupada would stress that all the time. People would say, I'm a Christian. He said, that's very good. Jesus Christ, that you have a bona fide teacher, Son of God. This is very good. So do you follow his commandments? Oh yes. Do you kill? Oh no. Do you eat meat? Yes. Well, and then how do you answer that? So that was always Prabhupada's standard over and over again. He would say, do you eat meat? Yes. Well, then you're killing. They couldn't put that together. But kill animals don't have souls. There was a famous conversation with that cardinal in France, and that cardinal's brother, by the way, was actually a Shivite, very famous Shivite, I think it was, Tantric. Yeah, Cardinal Denyu's brother had been in India, and he was into Tantric. So Denyu knew about the Eastern culture and the Vedas from his brother, but his brother was, in a sort of not a very bona fide approach towards the proper use of the Vedas. So I just heard part of that from Bhakta Art. And so with Lord Buddha, in the Buddhists, they are teaching this ahimsa and that this material world is a place of suffering. And their ultimate goal is to dismantle this material energy. The difficulty with the Buddhists is there's no soul. They just say that everything is matter, everything is material, and everything is suffering. Now many people, when you're in the prison house, there are actually examples. First of all, we have to understand that this material world is a prison house. And people ask, well, why did God create this world? Well, he created it for us because we wanted, for some reason, we decided, no, I don't want to be with Krishna. I want my own. I want to go out on my own. So he builds a prison house. And as a matter of fact, I was just told recently, and not myself personally, I was listening to the memories, and the wife of Sharabi, the person who designed the temple, several temples, and he laid out a whole plan for Srila Prabhupada, and he said, everything is perfect, but where's the jail? And for Mayapur. And Sharabi goes, the jail? Yeah, he says, yes, the first thing you have to do is build a jail, because there'll be criminals. And then that example Prabhupada then explained that in this material, in the creation, it's not that just like the state, the state doesn't want criminals, but they know there will be criminals, so there's a need for jails. And sometimes people, when they go to jail, if they're there for a very long time, you go in when you're young and you've been there for 30, 40 years, and now they tell you you can leave, and you've already got sort of used to that life. Some of them don't want to leave. They don't like being in jail necessarily, but they don't know what's out there. So they get attached, they get conditioned to being in jail. It's a difficult transition because they're not prepared for it. So similarly, people, you tell, yes, I'm suffering. Well, there's a way to get out of this suffering. Yeah, but I'd have to give up my smartphone and my Wi-Fi, internet, and other little things, distractions. Like in the purport it says, I remember the exact way Prabhupada put it, about the simple living, having a simple living. Let me see, get the exact words that Prabhupada used in his purport. He was talking about being humble and prideless, and then he said to be, here it is. Unless one is humble and prideless, one cannot be harmless and non-violent. And after being non-violent, one has to learn tolerance and simplicity of living. So Prabhupada oftentimes says that we've created an artificial standard of living. We create toys for ourselves, and we think, I can't live without a radio. I can't live without internet or smartphone. How's that possible? I mean, like the example Prabhupada talks about a priest who's telling his people in someplace in England that you have to surrender to Jesus, otherwise you'll go to hell. And they say, well, what's hell like? And he just surrender. It's very dark and there's no light. I said, well, that's where we work. That's no big deal. And he describes all these things. That's not so bad. So, but then there's no newspapers. Oh, there's no newspapers. Oh, and that was the standard then. They had to have a newspaper. There's no newspapers in hell. So in the spiritual world, people get attached to living in their suffering. So there are different approaches by the different incarnations of the Lord. Lord Buddha came about, I think it's something like, I don't remember the exact, they said 2,600 years after Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga began when Parikshit Maharaj died. And Prabhupada explains that at the changing of the yugas, there's like a twilight period. It hasn't completely become Kali Yuga. It isn't completely Dwapara Yuga. There's a twilight period. And so there's phases. And so Lord Buddha comes and he smashes this animal kiln, tries to make people humble, tries to make people non-violent. And then Sankaracharya came and said, there is a soul. The Buddhists are saying no soul, just everything must become void. Sunyavadi. Everything is void. Or is it Nivashesha? Sunyavadi. And then Sankaracharya comes and says, no, yes, the Vedas are necessary, and there is a soul. But the soul is one with there's one undifferentiated soul, the Brahmajyoti. And he teaches like that. And each one is leading to a different stage to gradually, sub-religious principles, to gradually come to the point of Lord Chaitanya. The Achinta Veda Aveda Tattva, simultaneously one and different with the Lord. And all of those qualities, the sub-religious principles, the humility, the pridelessness, the simplicity of living, is there in the process of the Vaishnava process of following, the principles of this age, the Kali Yuga, the Sankirtan movement, the Yuga Dharma for this age, the Sankirtan movement. And the 5 principal things, the 5 most important things are associating with devotees, the worshipping of the deities, living in a holy place, the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, and the study of the Srimad Bhagavatam. If you do those 5 things, if you have an appreciation for those 5 things, then you're guaranteed that you will have success in this process. The Lord Chaitanya, he came and gave us the process for this age. First there was these gradual Buddha, Sankaracharya, and Lord Chaitanya. And there's also an interesting pastime with Lord Chaitanya and some Buddhist monks. I think it was in Varanasi. And at that time in Varanasi, there was a type of Buddhists that were living in that area. Varanasi was mainly the followers of Sankaracharya, but also the Buddhists were there. The Buddhists are Voidists, the Sankaracharya followers are impersonalists. Lord Chaitanya had just finished dealing, I believe it was before, or just after Prakashananda Swami, who was a leading impersonalist guru, and he had converted him. And then there was a time when some Buddhist monks came upon Lord Chaitanya, and they had a debate, and Lord Chaitanya defeated them. And so they were embarrassed by this. So they came the next day with to offer some food to Lord Chaitanya. And it was contaminated food. they disguised it as something, something that was offerable, but actually it was contaminated. And a large bird comes swooping down, and with his talons, grabs the plate and throws the food in the air and picks up the plate and then drops the plate, and it hits the head priest in the head and knocks him unconscious as Lord Chaitanya is sitting there. And he then instructs the students of the head Buddhist priest to chant the holy names, to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And he is revived. And in this way, they're all, they've been transformed, and they begin to chant they become followers of Lord Chaitanya. So there's also a very interesting story about the one king, that the way Buddhism spread all throughout India and then into China. There was one king named Ashoka, and he took to Buddha's tenets. And it's actually in this particular time frame, when there are all these people running for office, it would be a perfect platform for a political candidate, because it talks about these are the principles that were laid down by Buddha: to be liberal and avoid selfishness, to maintain high moral character, to be prepared to sacrifice one's own pleasure for the well-being of the subjects. This is for the king. To be honest and maintain absolute integrity, to be kind and gentle, to lead a simple life for the subjects to emulate, to be free from hatred of any kind, to exercise nonviolence, to practice patience, to respect public opinion, to promote peace and harmony. So then it says Dharma was not a new religion nor a new political philosophy. It was a way of life and it was a way of a code of conduct and a set of principles. And he encouraged the subjects to adopt and lead a peaceful and prosperous life. And then he etched them into stone and had them all throughout his kingdom. And some things were like that you should plant trees and medicinal herbs and dig wells along the road for all the people to benefit by. No living being should be slaughtered or sacrificed. To offer medical care, universal health care for everyone, including the animals. The monks should all tour every 5 years for teaching Dharma. One should always be respectful to one's parents, priests, and monks. Prisoners are to be treated humanely. He encouraged the subjects to report to him their concerns regarding their welfare of the administration at all times, no matter where he is or what he is doing. He welcomed all religions as they desired self-control and purity of heart. And it goes on like that. And
where is this from?
This is from the Dharma of the principles of Ashoka, the king, and the principles of Lord Buddha that are outlined, by some of his followers. But things, as usually happens in Kali Yuga, they became, corrupted, and gradually, they were not following always exactly they become attached to their position and they misuse. But this was these sub-religious principles that Lord Buddha brought into human society to prepare for Lord Chaitanya's movement. And this is the nature of Krishna's pastimes. He's constantly thinking of the well-being of the people in the prison house. He's trying to he knows what is necessary for us to get out of this prison house. it's imperative on our part to be submissive and prepared to receive His mercy. And that's, and this is, this is what is being taught to us in the Srimad Bhagavatam. But there's so many, different incarnations, there's so many different beautiful stories, and not just stories, but actual historical events. And not only historical, some of them are future events. Like this one is a Buddha incarnation that hasn't come yet. Is going to come. So, anyway, does anyone have any questions or comments? Yeah.
I was noticing this, it's not so different from our time because we do have, seems like it doesn't directly say he fights them. I don't know if it's a different verse or if I had the imaginary idea of Buddha flying around in a
Me too, I
flying
thought that too,
ships.
but he doesn't know. It just says that it looks, I thought,
You just dress attractively, and there are even now, there are atheists flying around in scientific Vedic flying machines that work, and people see them once in a while, and they may have some influence on this, and people are on this planet killing inhabitants, the animals, and so it kind of fits anyways. And he dressed well as a monk, and he was attractive, so it kind of fits.
but you're saying that right now
It's not
there
so
are
different.
atheists flying around killing people invisibly?
Different
well,
planets.
inhabitants,
On
it doesn't
different planets.
necessarily say
Yeah, 'cause-
people,
Yeah.
and
No,
this stuff is
inhabitants.
going on.
Well, there is that whole thing about what was going on with the cattle.
Yeah,
That was never explained.
And they're unseen too.
Going on with what?
so, and they're
Cattle
using,
killing.
the idea is they're using
Manipulate.
cattle
And
mutilations.
the way they would do it, it was so clinical and
Yeah.
clean in a sense.
Well,
But
people see these flying saucers
Ghastly.
things, and
what's that?
people see these flying saucer things,
Yes.
and there's all these stories. So it's a time when the Vedic knowledge gets real materialistic and gets taken, very advanced and gets taken advantage of, and then Buddha comes. So it's really the same story.
Yeah.
It may be in different details, but it's really the same story.
But this Buddha is not.
It may not be out, it's not
Well,
out.
I'm just saying that this particular Buddha wasn't dealing with the misuse of the Vedas. He was dealing with, obviously, a force of Rakshasas that were creating havoc throughout the universe. It doesn't mention anything, but it does mention that he attracted them to becoming humble and prideless and non-violent.
Well, doesn't it say that they were well-versed in Vedic knowledge and flying around their flying machines, and they were misusing Vedic knowledge?
Maya was, yeah, the scientist Maya.
Well, the demons were misusing Vedic knowledge in a different way.
And it says it's the Lord that dresses as Buddha too.
Yes, but what it says is that there's a scientist by the name of Maya
Yeah.
who was well versed in Vedic knowledge. He taught them, yes. Yeah, did you have a...
So yeah, in the beginning of the teachings of Lord Chaitanya expresses that sometimes we become victimized, exploited by beings from other planets.
Really?
Yeah, right in the beginning of Lord Chaitanya, teachings of Lord Chaitanya.
Wow.
What
Wow.
was it?
I haven't read it in a long time.
That one of the distresses is become victimized, exploited, or
Wow.
terrorized by beings from other planets.
Wow.
Yeah.
Being, they use the
Prabhupada
word.
also say someplace that some of the popular and influential music stores
Yeah.
were Rakshasas
Demons
appearing to
taking birth from
mislead the
this
population.
I heard something like
He
that.
also did, and he may have said something about that, about certain political leaders too, huh?
I never saw or heard, but I heard that someone said that he said that.
We're trying to document it, huh?
Yeah, I heard something like that, and you could see that in certain cases, whether they're aware of it or not, too. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes these people aren't necessarily aware of how they're being manipulated.
He uses pawns.
Sometimes
Yeah.
they're only aware of whatever drugs they take.
Well, in that state, they're easily influenced by
Yeah.
subtle entities.
True.
Or
And
even the introduction of something like LSD could,
that could have been, yeah.
used by.
Yeah. So,
Anyway, the principle I was pointing out, it's the same basic story of the atheists are well versed in Vedic knowledge, whether it's about flying machines or whether it's about sacrifices. They're using Vedic knowledge and they're harming other living entities. So Buddha came.
Right.
And this Buddha
It's
is
just a difference.
different.
Different details.
Different
Yeah,
Like
details.
Ravana, he was very versed in Vedic knowledge and chanting all the mantras. His father was a Brahmin. But of course, we know his name even means one who makes others cry.
Right. Well, Hiranyakasipu, I mean, I've said this a dozen times, but when at the wake of his brother, when he's speaking to his mother and his sister-in-laws, what was his Hiranyaksha's wives? It was so erudite in explaining how we're not these bodies. It was a fantastic expose or class in you're not the body, and there's no reason to lament. And so, I mean, they're not, and they knew that he has to satisfy the more powerful demigods in order to get. But they think that they can figure out a way. In Hiranyakasipu's, he thought, if I could just figure out, well, I won't be killed in the day or the night, I won't be killed by this one, I won't be killed by that, all these different angles, but you can't outthink the Lord. You just can't do it. It's not, he's the creator, yes?
That's one of the hallmarks of a demon. They think they can outthink. That's the sure sign, Your Honor.
Yes, no, I mean, and that's, in that sense, I humbly submit that, at least for myself, that's why I'm in this material world. Obviously, I thought I could find something up, and now I'm trying to unthink all these years and lifetimes of thinking I can get away with something. You can't. It's not possible. You can't fool God. There's a prayer by Gajendra, and in it he says that you are so kind, that you're always with us, you're always attentive to at every moment of our existence. You are with us, and you are attentively seeing to our needs. You understand us. So that every single living entity, the Lord is with you, and He's always witnessing, even your innermost thoughts. He knows everything about us, and He's concerned about us in every way. No matter what we do, we can't really repulse Him. We'll get a reaction, a clinical reaction, but He'll always take us back. That's the beauty of it. I mean, we should be, and especially in this age, and especially at this moment, we should feel very, very fortunate. So, anyway, I apologize for anything I may have said incorrectly, or if I made some offense, but just try to present according to my realizations and what I've heard. So, is there anything else?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh sorry, I didn't see your hand.
I want to repeat from the purport again because it emphasizes so nicely the stress that Lord Chaitanya gave to chanting with humility, improvidence, and tolerance.
Yeah.
Here, Srila Prabhupada, he makes the point, unless one is humble and proudless, one cannot be harmless and nonviolent. So, what a powerful sentence that is, that by maintaining these demoniac qualities of pride and lack of humility or arrogance, people can't help, at least according to this sentence, Prabhupada's saying, unless one is humble and prideless, one cannot be harmless and nonviolent.
Right.
But it's really
I
powerful.
know, when I read that, and then the next one too, and after being nonviolent, one has to learn tolerance and simplicity of living. The whole, where Prabhupada talks about our artificial way of living. We think, that this whole culture right now, we're trying to create simple living, and Prabhupada wanted farm communities, but even within our simple living, the artificial lifestyle is pulling us. And as a matter of fact, we almost can't extricate ourselves from it because it's so, we're so dependent on it. And it has so much influence over everything that we do that it's almost impossible. I mean, I've seen, from, whenever we started in those few decades, how difficult it is. And I remember like Varaha, I was interviewing him back about, when Bajraj, what's his name again? Now Tirtharaj. We remember we did that little thing, we were interviewing people, and he spoke very nicely. It wasn't in the little film that he eventually put together, but he was saying, I don't see any way, and this is a person that I've seen from Marana Seva to here who really tried, and he's still now trying to live a kind of ideal Agrarian life. And he said, I just don't see any way, as long as you have to pay property tax. You have to somehow or other be involved with that economy. Unless there's just no way. If you own land, you have to pay that tax. And the Vedic culture is there, but you could give 25% of your, is it 25%?
Produce, yeah, I believe it is.
But that depends on whether or not the produce is there, and if there was a proper rainfall, and that's dependent on whether or not the king or the leader is doing the proper sacrifices, and you have qualified Brahmins. But at this time, it's almost impossible. Then you have all the things that are going on in the world of agriculture that, with the way they are manipulating the grain, there's a whole fight to get actual heirloom seeds that aren't manipulated by people like Monsanto and hybrids, there's the whole thing where people will have these big farms that are still not part of the corporate farms, out say in Nebraska or somewhere like that, and they get sued by Monsanto because Monsanto says part of your corn crop over here is some of our, we have a patent on the seed. Did you have a point?
Yeah, because the pollen grew.
I was just going to add to what you're saying
Yes.
after you're done.
No, it's okay, go ahead.
Well, now I'm going to reveal myself, and I watched the Super Bowl. But
What does that
during
mean? What does that mean? I don't know.
during the Super Bowl commercials, which are always funny. But anyway, they had this one beer company, and I can't remember what the name of the beer company was, but they were saying that for every 6-pack of beer that sold, that they would donate money to buy farmland that would be organic.
Really?
Yeah.
But first we want you to get drunk.
Well, you can get it and wash your hair.
But they want to sell organic beer,
That's it, yeah.
Maybe, but that's definitely what they were going to do.
So they could grow hops.
Well,
farming.
Is there organic wheat?
Grain and hops.
Organic.
They're trying to save their own culture that they've destroyed.
Yeah.
The one person that's actually doing something with cows.
I just was listening to a class by Maharaj, and he was saying that he had service to make report on Mayapur, and he was like investigating what Srila Prabhupada was mentioning in different charities and everything. And so Prabhupada, he mentioned once that he said that Mayapur will become, we will become independent from India, and we will have our own currency called Chaitanyas. That's what I heard. And then he said that every temple in another country will be embassy of Mayapur, and temple presidents will be like ambassadors. So it sounds like really like, what? It's like crazy, right? It's not possible.
Did Prabhupada say that, or it was?
Yes, Prabhupada said. That's what was told. So I was like, it sounds really crazy, right? Like what? We struggle on local level, what to say, becoming. But actually the point was that some things really sound impossible, and what to say about Manipur becoming independent country, even on the level how can we become self-sufficient? But the point was that we don't forget, but actually the important factor, the most important factor is Krishna in every activity. So that's why it sometimes goes beyond reasoning. Sometimes we think it's impossible, but still it becomes possible. The class was also that Temple of Vedic Planetarium. It requires so much money. How is it possible to collect? But it's somehow happening, So sometimes we think it's impossible, but it goes beyond the reasoning. It still happens and one of the point was that Krishna says to Arjuna that actually everything is already done. These soul soldiers are already killed by me. So you have to just try to fight. Actually, everything is done. So the same point was actually this movement is already spread by Lord Chaitanya. We have just to try. And everything is actually done because Krishna favors this movement. So only thing is required from us is to try. And even if we think it's not possible, result is not obtainable, still it's already done. So it's very encouraging. That's what I wanted to share.
Yeah, and that's a very good point, because that's what Prabhupada actually said. Apparently there's a story where he said, I already have 108 temples, and this was when he first got here. This one man relayed that, yes, I have distributed so many books. And we've heard time and time again Prabhupada say that when I first thought to come here, it's impossible. Why would they listen to a poor old man from a poor country? And originally he said to his own spiritual master, why will we're still a subjugated, we don't even have political freedom. And Bhaktisiddhanta dismissed all of that. So everything is as you're saying. I can remember specifically that I had invited Pancharatna, who's one of the stalwart Mayapur devotees all these years. And back in the 70s, I invited him to come and speak in Atlanta to encourage the devotees that, because at that time, a percentage of our money and when we sell books, a percentage of that go to the BBT, and the BBT would pay money for Mayapur. And so I was saying that there's going to be, and he came to discuss the plans at that time of the city in Mayapur. And at that time, that just seemed like, what are you talking about? You go there, and there's just a bunch of water buffaloes, and maybe there was I don't even think there was the long building at that point. But it was, there was mosquitoes, and there's probably still mosquitoes, but at least now we have fans in the rooms. So, but it is. But I would say also, and then there's another example that recently I was reading the Krishna book story. After Krishna kills Keshi demon, Narada Muni asked to speak to Krishna in the off to the side from the cowherd boys in the bushes, and he tells him what he's going to. He can't wait to see Krishna do, because he sees that you're going to do these things in 2 days. The day after tomorrow, you will be killing the 2 wrestlers and the elephant. Then you'll kill Kamsa. I can't wait to see it. And then you're going to marry 16,000 wives. I'm looking forward to that too. And he's telling Krishna, so it's already done, even though, so it's past, present, and future. But then also, what was I going to say? Oh, God, there was a good point. I don't remember now. What were we talking about?
Keshi demon, you were saying.
No, but
Once everything is there, it's going to happen.
Yeah, it's already going to
to
happen.
make the endeavor to try to
We just have to
reach
do
the
it,
Lord
yeah,
like
just
that.
have to make the endeavor.
Is it true that Prabhupada said that one person is required to start a temple, right? He said something like that. It's one person is sufficient to start a temple, in the beginning.
Or a householder couple.
Yeah, but let's say it's
One
also
person,
possible,
that's right, and you should know everything. You should know how to do kirtan, you should know how to do fire yoga, you should know how to cook, you should know how to do puja.
And then
That's
you have to get
exactly
money.
what happened. A lot of the temples were started in that way. Nityananda came from Buffalo, and I don't know if there was any other devotees here at the time.
No.
Jananjaya came, but there was a connection with Balavanta, who was kind of, had been to New Vrindavan, but Jananjaya and his wife came from Buffalo. A lot of these they came out of the Buffalo Center, and they were sent out. or Prabhupada would send them out to different parts of the world. The people would go to Hong Kong or Taiwan, or they would go to Australia. Charu talks about how him and his wife were there. They had read a couple of Prabhupada's books, but they didn't know anything. And Prabhupada, he had heard that he'd gotten a letter from Karanda to all temple presidents that you should be, as a temple president, you should invite Srila Prabhupada to your temple, not thinking that he would come. And he invited Prabhupada to come to Australia, and all they had was a storefront with a dirty rug. And they didn't know anything. And Prabhupada's coming, you see, they had just come from a big pandal in where there was a wedding and an installation of Radha-Krishna deities. And you see I think what was his name? Vagavan is carrying the deities. And Bali Madan, they're carrying the deities. And now they're installing the deities. And now they have to become Brahmins. They don't know what Brahmins are. And a Brahmin needs a Brahmin thread. So the wife, what's Churu's wife's name again? Vaibhavi. She said, I have to make Brahmin threads. So she didn't know what it was. They explained it, she went and did it. But she was making them for the women as well. And Prabhupada said, no, not for the women. But but they didn't know any of this.
He was praying.
Huh?
Praying to the deities, wasn't he, in Australia?
You're praying to the deities.
These are the lecture type.
Please help these malechas. Yeah.
And when he came back later, he was very pleased because he saw the improvement of what they were doing.
But I remember now what I was going to say, this point you made about that apparently, I'd like to see it, where Prabhupada said this, that Mayapur is going to be the capital of the world.
Not the capital, but maybe eventually.
And all the temples would have to, that. So I would submit that they're going to have to do a Rajasuya sacrifice, which means they have to come here and see if we surrender to their authority.
I think she meant like the Vatican is a country in itself.
Yes.
Yeah, that's not
The
like
Vatican
maybe
is an
eventually,
independent
but
country.
If they want to be the emperor, if they want to be the capital of the ISKCON empire, they have to come and see if we surrender to them. Because we're Prabhupada's wanted us to be self-sufficient. And a lot of our natures are very self-reliant, and we don't cotton to someone else coming telling us from some other place how to run our show, No, but anyway, when you think about it, what is going to happen? I just heard, while I was listening to a lecture by Srila Prabhupada about a different verse about Lord Buddha from the first canto, and it was an abrupt lecture because for some reason it was cut off halfway through. But he said, as I was mentioning, that in the transition from one yuga to the next, there's twilight periods, and things are adjusted according to that. So this is just the beginning of the golden age within the Kali Yuga.
What kind of groups did you call it in between?
What?
What was the word you used for the groups in between?
Twilight.
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 Okay, I thought you
It's
said
a
that.
twilight period. Like when the sun is rising. There's different phases of, look, now it's kind of a dull orange. Oh, it's a bright orange with purple now. You see the different colors. And then finally it's the sun. It takes time. And so we're going through phases. And so who knows? There's many devotees with many theories, or they know astrologically, that there'll be, whether it's a political upheaval or a natural disaster upheaval worldwide, or it will just be some other type of smooth transition into the fact that the society and the culture as we know it. Who would have thought at the turn of the 20th century that there would be internets and artificial intelligence and all of the things that we are so proud of, but also distract us from the real purpose of life?
Nostradamus.
There's another name for him that some boys use, but I won't say that here. But anyway, that's a very good point. That we don't, and how can we know? I mean, and also just if I think about my own life, how could I get the opportunity to associate with a personality like Srila Prabhupada? I had no qualifications for that. I mean, what was my qualification? I was a meat eater. I spent all my time, playing frivolous sports and not all kinds of sinful activities. And there was no qualification. I watched a lot of television. Well, that's not reading scripture. I mean, I did go to church, but I also sometimes would say I was going to church and I went bowling instead. So, but we blessed the alleyway before we played. My friend, his last name was Dapolito, and we would call it, and his nickname was Dap, and so we would call it Father Daps. And then we played, and we'd come back and tell our friends, yeah, we were there. It was good. So, like that, who can say what's not? It's possible. Everything is possible when we're dealing with the Creator, the Supreme Personality of God, Krishna. There's no impossible. But we have to be, back to your point, we have to become qualified to become empowered.
That's my point.
Well, you're having this debate about what is a Shaktavesh avatar, and so on. But there's also the empowered devotee, and so we become qualified that Krishna will empower us to be. If we have the proper attitude, if we are humble and we are prideless, and we are a simple way of life and tolerant, then we can become qualified to represent this movement. There are things that many of us did back in the 70s assisting Prabhupada that we had no qualification for. We were dealing with, lawyers and we were suing city governments and state governments and the federal government, trying to, get our constitutional rights established. We have freedom of religion, but what is religion? We said freedom of religion means selling these books. This is preaching. And actually it was established that the sale of a book is not a religious book is not a commercial activity. It is a freedom of religion and freedom of speech, and is protected by the First Amendment.
That was established.
Yes, it was established, yes.
We
had to fight for it though, or congregational singing in the streets. Very big. And still there's the city and the state, but then it's public versus private. If it's a mall, you can't do it necessarily. It's a private commercial venture, but public areas, you should be allowed, like a national park or state park. These are the fine points of it. But we had to fight them. How do we know constitutional law? All of a sudden, no, you're having to do it. You do the needful. Or even just how to get someone to stop and consider taking a book with that title, with these pictures. It's not part of our culture. It's not part of our... But Krishna gives the intelligence. And also, he gives the people the intelligence to stop and listen. That's also part of it. They get the mercy and you get the mercy. And you contribute to one another's receiving mercy. It's a reciprocal relationship, and that's the nature of the Gayatri Mantra. And also, Yasha Prasada Bhagavat Prasada, Yasha Prasada Nagati Katopi, we sing it every morning. That, mercy is being given to us by the spiritual master, and he's being, and then we receive it and we become enlivened, and then we do our service to him and he becomes enlivened. That's the nature of the relationship. And then he gives us more mercy. This is the nature of our relationship with our spiritual master. It's a dynamic relationship. The more we receive it and then try to give it, the more he is pleased and he gives more. Like that. We just have to keep our channels open and not let anything interfere. Anyway, anything else? Okay. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Give it up.
cleared the house. I completely cleared the house.
Oh, it went fast.
It's almost 10.
I put that so that you would be able to see the clock. So it
Oh, yeah.
blocks the window reflection.
I didn't even notice what time it was. But I did notice, I was wondering all of a sudden things, I looked up and I saw there was a lot of people gone, and then I saw that it was already 8:30, so, it wasn't me, it was the time.
Don't you notice that you don't see people get up and leave?
Sometimes, yeah, but sometimes you don't, sometimes you hear from them.
Because I don't even know what's happening because I'm looking at.
Is that still on, is it? It's not still on.
No, it should be off. No, it is. I thought I clicked it.